Coalition of Loud and Proud, outrage porn-free, civilly disobedient media, broadcasting live on the Worldwide Coalition Media Network, here in the city we love, Providence, Rhode Island, 90 Way Boston Street, our storefront studio. We are, in fact, your direct connection to democracy and the issues that matter here in Rhode Island. A very special guest, someone that I refer to lovingly as a repeat offender. Of course, he is Paul Roselli. He is the president of the Burrillville Land Trust. And if I could utter the immortal words, Invenergy, Invenergy, Invenergy. Paul is also a candidate for the governorship of the great state of Rhode Island. And that's something we'll touch on in the latter part of the interview. But after several months, if you will, a couple months of the issues seemingly, at least in the eyes of the general public, being a little bit dormant, a little bit quiet, all of a sudden, starting up a couple weeks ago with the attempt by Invenergy to use the reservation water in Charlestown as yet another sort of Hail Mary pass, it has roared back to life. And much like the stadium, it seems like we're in the stretch moments now. So this past week, we had the siting board, the EFSB, if I have it correct, siting board, which is a quasi-governmental agency perpetrated upon the citizenry of Rhode Island by your government, who decided a generation ago that you, the individual municipalities, shouldn't really have a direct control over their own future, that we needed soulless, heartless, my words, not my guess, we needed bureaucracy to be introduced into this. So in a development that should have been crushed mercilessly by the community probably a year or two ago, we have been treated, and I use the term loosely in the coalition air quotes, treated to a multidisciplinary process that has cost the town of Burrillville untold money, untold anguish, and a daily threat to the way of life that is incomprehensible to folks who haven't lived through that. Is that a fair summary, Councilor?
Well, I don't know about the counselor part, but in terms of the summary, you're absolutely right. It has roared back to life. I don't think it ever died down. What happened on October 10th, just a few days ago, was a reaffirmation of what we've been saying for 2 years or more. This is a statewide issue. It's a regional issue. It's a global issue. It shouldn't happen. It shouldn't take place anywhere. We've got to end this process of creating electricity with fossil fuels. That's the end of the story. What happened on Tuesday, what happened at the Burrillville High School with 600 people in the auditorium was well, how would you describe it? It was a fight. It was a battle.
It was a revival meeting.
It was a revival meeting. It was let's get down and dirty and
Steel cage death match. You know, it was
just about right.
Yeah.
And what came out of that was the 75 people who spoke. 73 of them were in opposition to the power plant, and two or three were who were in favor of the power plant. But what came out of that was a community of people that is statewide, from Burrillville to Block Island, westerly to Woonsocket, the Nipmunks all the way down to the Narragansetts, who decided that this was not a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they decided. And they collectively all joined in that auditorium at the same time, and with one solid voice for nearly 4 hours, they came out and they said no to this quasi-government review board, no to the idea of using precious water to fuel a power plant, which is in itself a little bit, we're both shrugging our shoulders here. So you find the word for it. But the reality is that at every point within that 4 hours, everyone who spoke without too much emotion, and when they did use emotion, it was tempered with facts. It was concise. It was consistent too. Mm-hmm. And it didn't matter where you lived. There were people there from Charleston and Cranston, North Providence, Johnston, Providence, yes, Burrillville, and some of the other towns between those. And then there were the Narragansetts, and the Massachusetts were there as well. And they reaffirmed what we all have been saying for 2 years. This is a not in my backyard issue. This is a state and regional and global issue.
Mhm. Absolutely. You know, one of the two speakers in favor of it, who represents a number of the trade unions, used the NIMBY word. And I've always said I take huge offense at that. The arrogance, the insensitivity, the intellectual bankruptcy of invoking NIMBYism in the year 2017 is stunning for someone who purports to be a leader. I will always say, well, whose backyard is it? The people who have been there in many cases for generations, in some cases since really the birth of this state, or is it the backyard of a group of rogue developers who seek to drop this environmental bomb into a host community and be accountable for none of the host, well detailed, well promoted, of damage, this sort of holocaust, if you will, that'll be dropped into a community, devastating a community. If I could draw a parallel between this and something on a completely different level, which is the baseball stadium, as someone who is outside of the process, but with an intense interest looking in, what's astonishing to me is that after all this time in both cases, and particularly with regard to the Invenergy situation, despite the thousands of hours invoked by the bureaucracy, despite the countless hours of expert witnesses, we still have yet to see A, a compelling reason why this plant needs to exist, and B, a compelling argument or scenario that will prevent the inevitable damage. How, after almost 3 years of torturing a host community, is that allowed to happen? If there was ever a case of, I'll call it societal malpractice, nothing less, and I'm trying to keep it clean because this is family radio, all right? That, I think, is what has been perpetrated upon the greater Burrillville community, and by your argument, correctly, the state as a whole.
Yeah, and I want to go back to something you said earlier. So, and get to that. You know, it's really has impacted us, and we're not only feeling it, but the Department of Health has felt it as well. Mm-hmm. So, in their latest advisory opinion, the Department of Health, Rhode Island Department of Health, has come out and they acknowledge that there's some mental anguish here. There's some concern for the health and safety of the people, not only within the town of Burrillville, but everywhere who is dealing with this. And we got to remember there are 32 communities all throughout Rhode Island who have not only felt the pain but have decided to act on it too. So they're not just with us in spirit, but they're with us in action as well. Mm-hmm. It's important to remember, and we stress this over and over again, there's no issues with any of the unions. Paul McDonald, Michael Sabatini, and all the rest. Look, brothers and sisters, we applaud you. You know, I make my living with dealing with and working with training contractors on the hazards of lead-based paint. That's one of the things I do when I'm not doing everything else that I'm doing. So I applaud those efforts. Where those efforts start to break down is that you're part of this community too. They are absolutely part of this community, and we work with them. We live with some of them. We have them over for dinner sometimes. We go out to them. They support the environmental cause all throughout Rhode Island. They hunt, they fish. They love going in rivers and streams, boating, canoeing, fishing, hiking, bringing the kids out to a campground, putting together an open fire somewhere, and enjoying the experiences of the natural world. They do that overwhelmingly. And how do we know that? We know that through some of the elections, year after year, no matter if it's a 2-year cycle or we get to a general election. Folks here in Rhode Island overwhelmingly support nature. They overwhelmingly support the environment. And that's just not people from certain sections. It's people from Central Falls and Warwick and Pawtucket, Providence, and yes, Block Island, and yes, Burrillville. but all the rest of the communities too. What was a little troubling that night was in some of the comparisons between some of the other projects that have been going on in Rhode Island and the Invenergy project. This idea that an airport on an existing runway, an expansion of an existing runway, somehow is compared to the destruction of 200 acres of land in the middle of the woods in an area that was rejected in 1986 for a similar project is a little disconcerting for most of us. That was probably not the best comparison. You know, we feel for everybody's pain when neighborhoods and communities get displaced because of expansion. Absolutely, it pains me. I grew up not too far from here. I grew up a couple of miles from here in an area that had fields and a playground, a sense of community, a sense of place. There was a local bakery, a local grocery store. There was the blacksmith right down the street here. Now it's now known as the North End of Providence. That's all changed. Those fields are gone. What used to be paper streets are now asphalt streets. Tenements and triple deckers are where the fields and places where we used to play around, and that's what exists now. So I get it. I get that part. There are opportunities in every community to either halt it, stop it, or modify it or change it. And we have one of those situations here. We have this situation here at this time to actually make a bold statement. The EFSB has an opportunity here. And I would challenge you and your viewers here to help the EFSB make that bold statement. Fossil fuels should not be used for the production of electricity. Mm-hmm. Let's make that statement. Let's make it now. There's a good example here. This has been a process, 2 years, 3 years, if we count all the other days and before that, and to get us up to this point. 3 years of work and effort. During that time, solar and wind have mushroomed, have been robust. Even ISO New England, look at the latest ISO New England report. They are struggling with the high use of solar electricity for good reason, right? When the sun comes out, the amount of solar electricity spikes. Mm-hmm. When the sun goes behind a cloud, it kind of diminishes. There are ways to overcome that. So the grid is being challenged by just how many people have decided they've had enough. Mm-hmm. They've had enough with government telling them what to do. They've had enough with centralized mega industrial size utility giants like Invenergy telling them we're going to put this thing here. They're tired of government who says that, oh, you don't have a choice, we have to trust the process. They're tired of it, so they've taken it upon themselves to make the change. So that's where we are. That October 10th meeting was a reiteration of all of those things. People are tired of this stuff. Mm-hmm. People have had it. Not just because it's a power plant, but because of the way this process has been handled. 3 people sit on a siting board in Rhode Island, 3 individuals. Margaret Curran from the Public Utilities Commission, Parag Agarwal from the Associate Director of Statewide Planning, and Janet Coit from the Round Department of Environmental Management. Mm-hmm. Our neighbors to the north and south have 7 members and 9 members respectively on siting boards. Projects get approved and denied from a wide area of stakeholders. Here we have 3 people.
Right, and you point out that we are routinely confusing, in the case of a power plant, or in the case of an issue that I'm also involved in a stadium, with private development being misconstrued, intentionally perverted to try and represent it as community development. Right. That private interests are dictating a process where property is being taken, property being bought, property is being converted against the direct interests and the better wishes of the community, with this "we know better than you" attitude, and just constantly flouting the body politic. Just looking them right in the eye and saying, You know, this, it's irrelevant the facts, it's irrelevant the emotions, it's irrelevant to the wishes of the community. We know what's best for you. We're going to do this. It's an insult to all of us on so many levels. Because to your earlier point, and I've maintained this every time we've spoken,
Yeah.
what's astonishing about your organization and the variety of groups that are involved in fighting this is the maturity of the message, the presentation of the message, the technical side of the message is all spot on. No one's debating, whether it be in the case of the stadium or more importantly to tonight's discussion, the case of this power plant. No one ever debates the facts. Instead, these red herrings, canards, false pretenses are thrown up. You know, we need the power. Well, actually, no, what we need to do is continue the development of battery technology so that we can even out these issues with regard to alternative energy. We don't need to in the year 2017. And I want to point out, and it was brought to all of us in such a wonderful manner when the three young men did their hike. We don't need to rip up a corridor, a nature corridor, which is so important to the ecosystems of the entire Northeast. And let's be blunt about that. And I'm no expert on this, so feel free to jump in. But ultimately, what you're for lack of a better term, by screwing with this corridor, you literally have the potential and the probability of throwing off groundwater issues, throwing off game issues, the natural balance that takes place with regard to ecosystem. All of that, they've managed. You'd almost think it was intentional. They managed to focus, we've said so many times tonight, like a laser on the most fragile, most environmentally sophisticated, and most important part of this state. There's a misnomer out there that, you know, if it ain't lakefront and it ain't waterfront, it can't be important. Well, balderdash. They continue to ignore. One has to question whether the truth is dead in America today.
Yeah. So let's be clear on this. Way back in 1986, there was this place called, this power plant called, or this company called Ocean State Power. They were coming in, trying to site a power plant, try to put it in pretty much the same area, maybe a couple of 100 feet to the north or the south or whatever, but pretty much in the same area. That area was denied by both FERC, run-on Department of Environmental Management, and the Army Corps of Engineers. Fast forward to 2015, and here we are again back at that same place. At the beginning of the application process, they put together what they termed was an environmental assessment. In other words, they went out there in a couple of days, looked around, found some bugs, found some animals, found some whatever, and said, well, this is what's here. Almost a year and a half later, in fact, not too long ago, the company called ESS, and I'm blanking on what ESS stands for, I think it's Environmental Science Services, they came back and they did an environmental assessment, multiple days, with multiple people going out, biologists, herpetologists, the insect folks, the aviologists, the bird folks, to actually take a look and discover what's there. Here's what they found. They found that the place is unbelievably rich in biodiversity. There are bobcats in that area. There are lynx. I never thought there was a lynx anywhere south of the Canadian border or whatever, but here they are down in beautiful northwestern Rhode Island. Flying squirrels, and all the usual suspects, the deer and the gray and the red fox, and on and on and on. Hundreds of species within that time period that they assessed it. They proved to us, and they proved to everybody else that that place is kind of sacrosanct. That's a place where nature hangs out.
Right.
They've got the streams and the bubbling brooks. Not only that, it's a place that people go to visit. In that area alone, between Buck Hill Management Area, Pulaski Park, you talk about the number of people that do certain things in Rhode Island. Hundreds of thousands of people go there every year from all over the world to visit that place because of the air, the water, the land, the recreation opportunities in the winter and certain times of the year, the hunting, whether it's for turkeys or pheasants or or if it's for deer or for other animals as well. So that's a place that's widely used by many, at least 100,000 people, all during the year in northwestern Rhode Island. The sense of community that's in our state is because of places like the town of Burrillville.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody denies, and you said nobody denies the facts. Nobody denies that if you're in Central Falls, or you're in Warwick, or Pawtucket, or Providence, you need open space. Nobody denies that. Our sense of community, and because we're in such a small state, is wider than outside our front door, is much wider than in our backyard, and is much more robust and utilized than just in walking distance. People travel to these places because they want to maintain that sense of community. Providence is no less like that. When I was growing up in Providence, and even today, or about 20 years ago when I lived in Providence, I always went outside of Providence to get back to where I was, where I grew up. The ocean is like that. The woods are like that. Hiking and fishing. As a kid, I used to fish with my father. He would wake me up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and off we would go to go fish all over Rhode Island. So our sense of community here is not just within our town, not within our backyard, it's our state. And that was proven over and over again. One other thing that came about, if you look at any of the pictures from the October 10th EFSB meeting at the Burrillville High School, was the type of people there. We're not talking about a certain class of individuals. There was a wide spectrum of individuals there, all socioeconomic groups. We had the Massachusetts there, we had the Narragansetts there, we had people from all over Rhode Island because they value their sense of community. And when they value their sense of community, they take part. Mm-hmm. And sometimes they take action. And that's what was so intriguing about that October 10th EFSB meeting. 600 people. Yep, the people on the union side, the people from the IBEW, the laborers, the painters, the construction workers, along with the Indians, town residents, and the residents from all over the state of Rhode Island. That place is their sense of community. And that was proven over and over again that night. It's pretty amazing.
No, absolutely. My frustration, first of all, I come from a union family. I support private labor unions to the hilt. I believe that trade unionism is an expression of capitalism. You've got individuals, similarly talented, binding together to create an economic force and gain economies of scale in the marketplace. That's America. That's what makes America great. My frustration as a state, without going off too much into a libertarian tangent, is that rather than focus on the economic opportunities that could be had from cleaning up and rebuilding Providence, Central Falls, Pawtucket, and creating clean centers of industry here in this state, using the free market to drive in some of the technology companies that other states around the nation have benefited from, both spiritually, economically, financially, all of that, we instead replace that with this energy of a government that's obsessing over building government projects, build it and they will come, despite a demonstrated lack of need, whether it be in energy, whether it be at baseball. So our focus is so wrong-headed. And there are so many opportunities, literally within walking distance of this studio right now, to using the marketplace to raise up people's lives, education, to clean up aging cities, both financially, ethically, and quite frankly, environmentally. There's all sorts of opportunity here, and yet for whatever reason, we constantly go down the wrong path. It's a failure of leadership at the highest level. It's an absence of vision, and we're going to get into that in a few minutes. But it's an absolute failure, and it's tragic.
Yeah. So I think our mentality is, and there's nothing wrong with having industry. Let's be clear about this. But the type of industry we're talking about is a mega industry that belongs, I don't know where it belongs. I think in this world right now it doesn't belong anywhere. And let's be clear about this, because the fossil fuel industry is not the industry of the future.
Right.
It's not the industry of today, it's not the industry of tomorrow, and it's definitely not the industry 20, 40 years from now.
Right, and there's a trend there. And again, and tonight I'm bringing in a lot of different issues to in a sense, prove a correlation here. I pointed out earlier in the week in a separate forum that Rhode Island has this incredible capacity to get into the downside of just about every major investment possible. The mall is a perfect example of that. I don't think anyone in 1999 foresaw the internet as we know it today, but at the same token, we invested a generation of funds and human capital into building a physical vehicle that is flawed and failing as we speak. We are building a stadium at the beginning of an era in which the stadiums, sports stadiums, and the sports industry as we know it has begun a demonstrated decline. We're talking about, and I hate to even use the term investment because using the term investment in the same sentence as inventory is almost an obscenity to me, but we're investing, if you will, and sacrificing a way of life to support a technology that has clearly begun its decline. We constantly make the same mistakes, and we're astonished, or at least our leadership professes to be astonished that this time it didn't work out.
Yeah.
That's a failure of leadership. That's a failure of vision.
Yeah, it's a vision, and you know there are people out there who have that vision. There are people who are looking into the future, whether it be tomorrow, whether it be fossil fuels or ball stadiums or sports in general, and those people we have to get into those places of leadership.
Mm-hmm.
That's where we need to be, and that vision is not that difficult to acquire, as I do, and I know we're going to talk about this soon, but as I do, and I'm sure you do as well in doing your TV and radio program, that you meet those people all the time. It's not that difficult to find areas of vision, but when we have a 1920s or 1930s mentality where you have to build something big in order for it to be what we think of as either being profitable or meaningful, that's not the way to go. We're ignoring 700 people who lost their jobs in Benny's. That should be the focus. This is not an industry, these are people. This is not a power plant. We're spending $1 billion. That shouldn't be our focus. It should be people. And those 700 people who are just about, many of them my age, maybe a little younger, aren't going to be employable. Let's face it, this country of 45, nothing wrong with 45-year-olds, love them all. But if you're over a certain age, it's going to be more and more difficult to find a
How do you think I ended up in the media?
Yeah. So now we got to think anew. The bill that was recently passed about creating co-ops in the state of Rhode Island, giving a little more flexibility in terms of regulation and state support, that's the way to go. That's vision. That's where we need to be. We need to change our focus from these, and excuse the term, this Walmart approach where bigger is better, and get down to, and I'm going to go back to where I grew up, with a bakery, a delicatessen, a supermarket, a grocery store. Some guy came around selling oranges and fishes every once in a while. Maybe not that, but that was a local businesses providing local stuff for local people. That's the economy. That's where the economy shines. Providence is a great example of that. And you walk around Providence, you see these local entrepreneurs, these small restaurants, these small shops, whether they be tea, coffee, whatever it is. Those places flourish because they have a ready population, because people gravitate towards these smaller places. It's a sense of community. That's what we need to build up. Putting a mega giant industrial complex in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the woods, destroys community, destroys that sense of place. We need to change our focus. That's a good place to begin.
No, and I agree. And I spend a lot of time in discussing both Burrillville and Pawtucket. Those are my favorite subjects these days.
Yeah.
Take a look at Pawtucket for a second. To your point,
Yeah.
this past week, we've gone through another series of hearings about a stadium. Not so quietly, the GAM Theater, which I had the privilege of seeing a few events there, a wonderful theater. an economic generator in and of itself, because you're bringing people in who want to buy their product. Move to a bigger facility. Now, this is an important point. They didn't go away. They're not shrinking. They're actually appear to, I'm an outsider, but they appear to be growing. So there's always an economic opportunity. This is what's so great about Providence. A, it's a city of neighborhoods, and B, in a city like Providence, if you're the very best at any one of a variety of food or restaurant products, you have the opportunity to thrive here because there's a willing culture. There is a market willing to embrace them. And in Pawtucket, a simple tweak in the law just a couple of short years ago made breweries all of a sudden competitive.
Pretty amazing.
And what you have now in Pawtucket is an organic explosion of businesses who were freed of their economic shackles and are growing because of less government, not because of more, not because of a government investment in it. And so here's the tragedy. The GAM leaves. It's a year-round institution that brings a variety of people, and they provide a variety of missions, educational, entertainment, something that you could build a neighborhood around. And while we're arguing about an idiot stadium, which is also, despite the hype around it, is an entertainment function. So to your point, cities, whether it be Chepachet or Burrillville, cities that are able to sort of find their space. In the case of Burrillville, you've got an economy that exists, and not a lot is being spoken about this at the non-Burrillville level. You have an economy there that exists because of the presence of natural resources and an economy based on people visiting the area because of that, which you will crucify, and I use that word intentionally, you will crucify if in fact you, again, drop this bomb into the middle of this beautiful area. And so one step, and I'll use the term loosely, forward, 3 steps back, a lifestyle, a community destroyed because for a short-term investment in a failing, declining technology. That's what makes economic sense in the state of Rhode Island. That's nuts.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense anymore. So I want to ask you a question.
Sure.
Yeah. So here we are. Yeah, I know. Let me reverse. Let me reverse the
Yikes.
tables here. I know, huh? So you look at this. You look at this situation, and yeah, there's a displacement here. There could be a displacement of a community. There certainly can be a displacement of individuals. If given the choice, I'm asking you, if given the choice of how you would solve these issues, here's an issue. A $1 billion corporation comes into town, says we're going to build something, and you can use the ballpark if you like as an example. How do you solve that? Without displacing community? What's the first thing you should do?
The first thing you should do is to do no harm.
Bingo.
All right. The problem, and this is the challenge, because it's I've got another guest coming on. We use the term onion issue here all the time, because there are effects and counter effects. Now, for example, the stadium. You bring a facility like this, and the first rule of thumb should be, as a free market person, if they come here in a free market sense, and they buy property on the open market that they pay for themselves, and they engage their own risk capital, that's a natural evolution of life. And there's not, I won't stand in the way in that unless it promotes egregious harm. If they're using government connections, in the case of, say, Invenergy, to smooth their way in a highly regulated product where there is overt harm to the community, I've got multiple problems with that.
Sure.
If, everyone is chasing Amazon now. That's the, failed leadership across the country is sort of using that as a shiny object to, take people's attention away from their failure over a number of years to develop a quote-unquote real, or I'll use the term organic economy. If you have to resort to paying for someone to come in, you've done harm. Because then what's happening, because the issue that's not talked about is, in terms of a social justice question, you're literally, in the case of Pawtucket, attempting to promote a form of gentrification that will occur to the benefit to accrue to the benefit of outsiders who are using government agencies to finance their involvement in disrupting a community.
Sure.
That's wrong on multiple
Yeah,
levels.
of course.
But to answer your question, if, for example, the Pawtucket people, and I've said this to Mayor Grebian, no secret, I've said it publicly, I've said it to him personally. I personally like Don Grebian. I think he's an honorable guy. I think he's woefully misinformed in this, but I've said to him, if the Red Sox came along and said, you know what, guys, screw it. We're just going to build it our own. We're going to use our own money. We're going to buy dormant land. That's the free market.
I don't think anybody would argue with that.
And in fact, they would be, I am convinced, and I've told Red Sox management this, that you would be cult figures overnight.
Yep.
You would transform from zero to hero in a matter of minutes, because
Milliseconds.
Rhode Islanders, I'm not a lifer here. I've only been here about 25 or so years. But Rhode Islanders, there's that attitude, you can't do that to our pledges, only we can do that to our, we're fiercely loyal. We're tribal in nature.
Yeah.
All right. We are our own little cult. And if you come to our community and you provide a service, and here's the key thing, you legitimately invest in the community.
You're heroes.
You're they
heroes.
would sell out every game.
Yep.
People would flock to it. This whole conversation would cease to exist in a matter of minutes.
So now let's go back to Invenergy. So did any of that happen way back 2015?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely not.
Right.
None of that happened. There were no alternatives. There was no community involvement. There was
Right.
no discussion. The first time we heard about it was when our governor, Gina Raimondo, went to the Providence Chamber of Commerce and stood next to a big poster with this industrial-sized power plant next to Michael Polsky. And she said these famous words, "I'll do everything I can to make sure you're successful."
Campaign contributor, Michael.
Yeah.
Right. I believe he did donate money to her campaign. Yeah.
Twice, actually, in 2015 and, 2016 and 2017. They're only allowed personally to give $1,000 according to campaign finance laws in Rhode Island.
Right.
So he gave $1,000 last year and $1,000 this year as well.
Which she sees, and it just as an aside, she doesn't seem to have a problem with.
Well, all the rest of us do. But,
Right.
But that's a really good answer. That's an excellent answer. If you can find somebody, and now you got to go cater to those people. So wouldn't it be better? Wouldn't it have been better 2 years ago to start cultivating and start looking at a different type of energy or a different type of industrial giant? I don't know what it is right now. Could have been maybe more wind farms off the coast of Block Island, Long Island. We're going to do that in a couple of years, right? Maybe it's not a fossil fuel giant. Maybe it's a solar giant who has some innovative approaches to solarizing existing buildings that are facing the direction of the sun through windows or something, or maybe even roof tiles. Wouldn't have that been the way to go?
Right. And to the point, joining us probably in a couple of weeks is Ethan Giles. I don't know if you met Ethan. He's he ran for assembly on the east side of Providence. He's very, very active in the anti-stadium movement. He was on the show a couple of weeks ago where we talked almost exclusively about the stadium, did a brief conversation, but he is a solar entrepreneur. And we're going to have him on for an hour, and we're going to talk about solar power. We're going to eliminate, here's a gentleman who's involved in the physical construction of solar fields. And we're going to talk about the realities, the challenges, the issues, the level of subsidization, compared to the reality of the subsidization of fossil fuels that take place in this country. Yeah. We're going to slay myths. And so you're absolutely right. We had an opportunity, and this is what's so frustrating. When Barack Obama, and I'm no supporter of Barack Obama was president, that's an aside. Barack Obama was president. We had a governor, Gina Raimondo, who was spiritually at least close to the White House, and had some sway. And we host in this city. We are blessed because we have arguably some of the finest universities on the planet. Two of them, and they're all great. I mean, they all do different things. But two of them that could have had, what I call break glass, add water impact are Brown University and the Rhode Island School of Design. Now, we're blocks away from literally one of the 2 or 3 finest art libraries on the planet. Mm-hmm. Now, tell me that Gina Raimondo couldn't have spoken to the White House. I mean, this is kind of, I love this kind of just hypothesis here, but I don't think it's within without the bounds of reason. Now, she could have called the White House. She had stuck with Obama on a political level and supported him and said, okay, we need to take a meeting with Musk, we need to take a meeting with Google, and we need to sit down, the President of Brown, Ms. Paxson, the president of the Rhode Island School of Design, and we need to figure something out. I got a couple acres of primo land 50 minutes from Boston via mass transportation. What can we put there?
What can we do?
Because, and we're talking about the type of investment that would have been de minimis to a company like Google, wouldn't even have shown up on the balance sheet.
Absolutely.
Would transform
We've transformed
the city of Brown, the state,
and maybe even the region.
right,
too,
utilizing
in a progressive, forward-looking manner, not an office park in the middle of Johnston, in the middle of the woods, or what used to be woods, now
Right.
it's all clear cut, or a proposed fracked gas power plant in the middle of the woods in northwestern Rhode Island.
Right.
Or even a ball stadium that's going to be supported by, what was that again? Taxpayer money?
Right,
That-
the city of Pawtucket is literally willing to leverage their forward-going state aid to collateralize the construction of a baseball stadium. Let's think about that, regardless of what political your background are, whether you're libertarian or a progressive Democrat, whatever, that's, again, just nuts. So you had this opportunity, this moment in time, to utilize the skill sets that are here in Rhode Island. And a critical part of business, by the way, is being able to sit back, whether it be a municipality, a state, an individual business, and take a critical, analytical, somewhat cold-hearted look at what your skill sets are, what your talents, your plus and minuses. You do the balance sheet. What are the problems? What do we got? A block away, the finest art school in the planet.
And we got cooler and warmer, I think. Right?
We got cooler and warmer. We've got a university
So,
without parallel. Graduate schools in computer science that are arguably one of the tops in the planet. So imagine this in the year 2017, where advances in fabrics and textiles are computer-based, yet at the same time require a human input into all sorts of sophisticated designs. We have everybody we need within a square mile.
that's correct. That's
And they
right.
did nothing.
Yeah, yeah, it's too bad too. I'm gonna go back to the October 10th.
Right. Draw this
EFS
back.
meeting and try to draw that back.
That's why I enjoy our conversations, though, because
Yeah,
you can
yeah.
get philosophical here.
And it's good to get philosophical. In that auditorium, where we're geologists, we're experts in hydrology, water use, experts in solar. We had a couple of people get up and who were solar entrepreneurs, talked about the robust industry, number of people, 4,000 people who are employed full-time, new hires, new full-time employees, FTEs, throughout the state and the region, dealing just with solar energy. That's the wave of the future. That's the wave of now. That's what's happening now. That's the wave of the future. We need to be more progressive in those areas. Healthcare. Brown is developing. Brown and Rick and a whole bunch of PC, Providence College, and are getting together and producing a nursing school. My guess it'll be the finest nursing school on the planet when it's done, because of that cooperation, because of the talent pool that's already there. I know a little bit about nurses. The three females in my life, my mother, my older sister, and my younger sister, were all RNs. My mother was an LPN when she was alive, and she worked the graveyard shift. So I know a lot about nurses. My sister graduated from St. Joseph's nursing school way back when. So the pool here of people is tremendous. And the pool of people in that auditorium on October 10th was tremendous too. You've got to hand it. You have to hand it to individuals who take active leaps of faith with their experience and their education and make a statement. That's pretty impressive. That's what we need in government too. That's what we need. The type of leadership we need is to take those individuals with that experience, with that expertise, world-class leaders, and they come here and they love our city, love our state, and want to make a difference. Invenergy should not have been allowed to even step foot in this state. That's the reality of it. If someone was in charge or at the leadership role at that point in juncture, it would have been a nice discussion. It should have been a nice discussion. Maybe you give it to some of your staff to take a look at, realize, kind of analyze, but in the end, thank you very much, but no thank you. No thank you. Because we're not at that stage anymore. Even now, 2 years later, we're even less at a stage. I mean, to think that this process has gone on for 2 years, and we're almost at the point now that we were 2 years ago, that we're still discussing this, we're still analyzing this, we're still bringing up facts. Invenergy, as you say, is doing a Hail Mary with water supplies. More than a Hail Mary. It's 11:59, getting to the 12 o'clock, and everybody turns back into mice and pumpkins again. The charm has gone.
Well, but you see, that's the, and we only got about 5 or 6 minutes left, so it's time to get political. I'll say it.
Sure.
The hallmark of the Raimondo administration, whether it be tolls, whether it be a stadium, whether it be a power plant, is to take a process that is universally loathed, devoid of facts, intellectually bankrupt, and by my estimation, simply through attrition, try to make it successful. It's none of these ideas, I should say this, all of these ideas stink. The governor, I was on the John DePietro show earlier today, and I enjoy John a lot. We can have a few chuckles, and I pointed out to John that the governor, I have to give her credit for one thing. The governor has accomplished something that was heretofore thought impossible. What the governor has done is unite literally every single political, philosophical, and financial perspective in the state to a degree simply unanimously in opposition to everything she stands for. She has united progressives, libertarians, Green Party, Republicans. We are all dancing arm in arm down the street because of just how much we universally loathe the programs and the ideas that she's brought to the table. So she has done some good. If we survive the next couple of years as a state, and I use that term intentionally, we've actually got working relationships with people in the state who 4 or 5 years ago probably weren't even on speaking terms. I mean, holy cow! So now you're running for governor. All right, let's get right to it.
Sure.
You've announced formally.
I've declared formally.
Okay, so you're in it. You're running as a Democrat.
I'm going to run as a Democrat.
Right, so you will be primarying Ms. Raimondo.
As long as I get 1,000 signatures sometime between the end of June and about July 10th.
One night that week, I do care. I'm a libertarian. I can only endorse people in my party. But that Friday, we're going to set up as part of the show. All right. I promise you this: a little table right outside the window, and we're going to invite people on the show to come by. Maybe have a lemonade.
I would love it.
All right,
That would be
and a conversation.
So it is uniting people.
It's
uniting people.
Right. Well, listen. Let's be honest. I mean, we become friends.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for Governor Raimondo, I don't know that we would have met.
That's true.
All right.
That's true.
And we ran into each other at the Pride Parade. You were the
right.
videographer. I was marching in it. It's what a world.
What a
It's we go to each other's events now. Again, that's what we will have. We're going to have a little sign-a-thon.
That would be great.
For Paul. We're going to have some fun. We're going to get signatures, and we're going to ask people in Providence because you're presenting a real alternative here, aren't you?
I think so, and I hope so. The alternative is that vision. The alternative is to look at people first. Not policy, not politics, but people first. And the people include the experts that are already here, the talent pool, the folks in industry. There's a whole bunch of people here who have already decided that they are going to try alternative things when it comes to energy production and arts and the economy. And we've got a very robust media whether it be the established like the Providence Journal and the TV stations, yourself, EcoRI, RI Future. Those folks are passionate about telling the news, passionate. And that's what we need to capitalize on, because if we can tell this story, if we can tell the story of our city and state, people will flock here by themselves. People will come here, organizations and businesses will come by themselves. I decided to run for governor for this very fact, and I've told this story before and I'm happy to tell it again. I was in Chicago, and when I was in Chicago at the People's Summit back in June or May or whatever it was, I heard that just a few weeks before I was there, our governor, Governor Raimondo, was there to receive a check from Michael Polsky during a fundraising event sponsored by Hugh Hefner's daughter. She received a $1,000 check from the very person who has been in this controversy, who has been the head of this controversy for this power plant for the past 2 years. I found that arrogant. I found that I couldn't take that anymore. That was one of those key moments, and I'm sure I'm sure you've discovered that key moment when doing what you're doing now. There was just one point in your life you decided that enough is enough. And I went with her through the cooler and warmer thing. I went with her to the UHIP debacle. I went with her to the firemen and the teachers and the other unions where their pension funds are pretty much kaput for now. And I said, okay, well, maybe there might be some saving grace here. But after each and every one of those, the chances for survival seem to be, or the chances for redemption seem to be slim. And then our governor goes off to Chicago and gets a check from Invenergy. And I said, no more. So yep, I'm running. I'm going to run. I'm going to try to beat her. I'm going to try to beat our governor in the primary. And if I'm successful, and I know it's a long steep, I get it. It's a long climb. The odds are against me. I get it. But I'm committed to trying, and that I hope is going to propel me enough and propel everybody enough to come out and vote. That is going to be key, and I think you hit the nail on the head about people united and all lockstep in a certain direction. For anything to happen, particularly these next two elections, people have to come out and vote. I honestly don't care who you vote for. I hope you vote for me in the primary, but you got to come out and vote. All the progressives, libertarians, whatever make, shape, size, as long as you're, what's the voting age, 18 and over? As long as you're 18 and over and able to get in front of a voting booth and you pick up that pen and touch that electronic screen or still make that connection between the tail and the head of an arrow, get out and vote. Absolutely. That's going to be key.
Well, we're going to have you on again to talk about the election. We have a rule here at the coalition, and we haven't really talked about this because we're just starting to get into the election season here. But the rule of the coalition is very simple. We don't handicap elections here. We don't talk about fundraising. We don't talk about polling. Very simply, I'm not interested if you're going to win. I'm interested in why you should. I'm interested in discussing facts. I'm interested in discussing issues, approaches, philosophies. The handicapping of the election that the conventional media obsesses over with, I've had enough of. I've seen it alter too many times the potential for both individual candidates and as a result this state. And so I say enough of that. All right? You'll come on for an hour or so one night soon, and you'll explain to me in infinite detail, drilling down to any issue you want, exactly why you think your approach is the best way to go. And the beauty of independent media, whether it be Motif, RI Future, EcoRI, the Coalition, any one of those, is that we're not slaves to the conventional approach to anything. We set our own course. And it's our responsibility as a member of this great amorphous sort of revolutionary new indie media, it's our responsibility to raise the bar, to elevate the argument, to challenge the conversation. That's why we're doing it. There's plenty of pablum out there already. So for all of us to struggle and work as hard as we do, we refuse, all of the people, I've met all the people, I'm proud to be friends with all of them, we refuse to fall into that trap because we'd rather just simply go home than be the same old tired crap that passes from media generationally in the state. And so that's my promise to you.
Good.
Fair enough?
Great, fair enough.
Thank you very much for
Thank
coming in.
you.
And you're a gentleman, and I really enjoyed the conversation
Same
tonight. Folks, Paul Roselli, wearing two hats tonight. First of all, he brought us up to date on the Energy Facility Siting Board conversation that had with 600 plus both Burrillvillians and members of communities so disparate, so different, so it was really astonishing. It was. I didn't have the privilege to be there that night. I had to work, but just the sense that you got simply from watching the crowd and talking to the people. I think the term revival meeting. If there was, it was almost like a Rhode Island revival meeting that night as the crowd kind of just caught fire. Always articulating a clear, cogent vision that is facts-based, tinged with emotion, but in a mature, practical perspective being advanced that, quite frankly, the leadership in this state could learn from. So it's at this moment, I always am very proud to say, we're all Burrillville. You guys are warriors. And for anyone who is falling into that cynical, we can't change things, that's just the way it's going to be, folks just have to look to all of you as a personal example in what the individual can do if they get together with people of goodwill. Thanks very much.
Great, thanks so much, Pat.
All right, folks, you are listening to the Coalition on the Worldwide Coalition Media Network, brought to you by a number of good people. iServices LLC, Beacon Shipping and Logistics, AirSciences.net, the fine people at the New England Cannabis Convention. We'll talk a little bit more about them in the next segment. We're going to go right to break right now. CoalitionRadio.us, Facebook.com/The Coalition Radio. Of course, on the mighty Twitter at Coalition_.